State 27-17 for their 6th straight win in the series.
It's a good, solid win for Arkansas.
The beautiful win. A dominant performance from Arkansas.
12 years in the making. What a week to be a Cougar.
Release date September 17th. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TBD SportsCast. With yours truly, I'm Joey.
And I'm Mason. Welcome to TBD SportsCast College Football. This episode is entitled Surprise, Surprise. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this weekend we were definitely surprised.
Just a little bit. I mean, there were a lot of great matchups and some better upsets, to say the least. Some games coming very close and some games not so much. So let's get into it.
Ohio State fans, let me just be the first person to say, we were right, you were wrong, they were overranked, boom, what do you think of that? All right, Oregon came in there, stormed the place, and they lost, all right? I called it last week. I said it was going to happen. I called Oregon, and you know what? They came in there. Anthony Brown, dude, came in there and showed out, played a great game, over 300 yards passing. The rushing game looked great. Defense, they were down from the start, but they still came in. They played a great game, and Ohio State took that L. What do you think, Joey?
I think it was a great game. I mean, I was texting you saying that, honestly, I didn't think, no matter who I chose and stuff, like, it was a win-win no matter what. I mean, with any of these games, I did choose Ohio State last week. Only because, you know, Oregon was having some situations on defense with their star linebacker and their defensive end being out for the game. But, you know, although they still showed some struggles on defense, it didn't really matter with that offense being as lethal as it was, just going up and down the field. Ohio State's defense definitely showed some big weaknesses, which is something we said starting last season. We were pointing out how there were big weaknesses on Ohio State's defense, but, you know, nobody believed us until this happened. And you know, I'm just happy to see that finally somebody who's getting by their name is finally getting called out, and the AP is kind of getting called out now.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And you know what? Ohio State is now 1-2 in 2021. They lost to Alabama in January in the national championship, and now they lost to Oregon. Yeah. So they're only 1-2, and they're leading with losses starting their 2021 season. And you know what? I couldn't be happier about it because we said all last season they were overranked. They shouldn't have been in the national championship in the first place, shouldn't have been in the playoffs in the first place. And you know what? They finally got what was coming to them, and like you said, they can't get by on their name any longer.
Ohio State, don't get me wrong, their coaching staff is really good.
Yeah,
like,
Ryan
you can
Day
tell,
is one of the best coaches in college football.
Yeah, you can tell both games they played this season, their first half was awful. But, you know, just having a great coaching staff, you can tell by how they come out in the second half. And both games, Ohio State came out strong as heck, outscoring Minnesota the first game, and then unfortunately falling short. But, you know, C.J. Stroud throwing over 400 yards kind of tells you something. But, you know, Ohio State, this is going to be a strugglesome season for Ohio State, which we'll get into later. But yeah, I mean, great win by Oregon. Tough luck for Ohio State. Good luck the rest of the season. But another good team in the Big Ten is actually Iowa, facing off against Iowa State. Iowa, we didn't think they would have the same success on defense as they did against Indiana, but, you know, 4 turnovers in the second half against a very strong Iowa State offense. I mean, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy, to be precise. But, you know, I know I called the game, but I didn't think it was going to turn out the way it did in the second half. It was a close game throughout, and then the second half, you know, like I said, 4 turnovers, and Iowa State just couldn't keep up. Their offense is great, but Iowa's defense is just incredible.
Yeah, and with Iowa State, it almost seemed like they were fine until they got that fumble at the 10-yard line in the second half, and Iowa recovered it and scored a touchdown and got a scoop and score. I mean, they seemed fine. I mean, that just killed their morale, and then they just couldn't come back. It almost just like they just couldn't mount a comeback.
And, you know, of course, me and Mason were texting throughout Saturday and talking a little bit, and I also took some notes as well. And part of my notes, I actually, at least for the first half, I said Iowa and Iowa State is like a second coming of the Georgia-Clemson game. It was a very defensive game. Not a lot of offensive progress was happening. And then, come the second half of the second quarter, Iowa's offense started moving, and, second half happened. And although it was still a defensive game, Iowa just kept kind of rolling over Iowa State's offense. And the biggest question we have at this point, I mean, within the past 2 games, Iowa State's offense hasn't been able to make that much progress. So that's my biggest question. Can their offense, even though they have top-tier talent, can their offense get back to the level that they were last season? And, they have to play Oklahoma, Texas, West Virginia, all that good stuff. So it's going to be a questionable season for them, but I wish them the best.
Yeah, and speaking of great offenses, a surprise, BYU versus Utah. They came out of nowhere. I mean, when you really look at this game, BYU was definitely the underdog here. They were not seen to win this game, and they won 24-16. So when we look at this, I mean, I told you earlier, Utah just kind of looked like a high school team. It was like their defense just could not stand up to the BYU offense, and the BYU offense looked great.
And I didn't know this until College Game Day actually came on and stuff, and they started talking about this game a little bit. They still have BYU still has a little part of Zach Wilson because his brother is actually playing linebacker at BYU. Fun fact. Going back to how you said Utah was playing like a high school team, I mean, their defense actually still played pretty well. I mean, they had a rough second quarter, giving up, I think, 13 points. But other than that, it was, maybe a touchdown or a field goal. I think the biggest problem with Utah was, the problem that we saw after the first week. Their offense just cannot move. They had 2 scoreless quarters, which you just can't do if you're going to go into a big matchup like this. And, BYU took advantage of it. Their defense played incredibly well. I will give them that. I'm not going to say that it's just because Utah's offense is not the best, but BYU's defense played very well, and their offense definitely kept up with it. And, like I told you earlier, when your defense is on the field a lot, it's hard for them to keep up, and I think that's what happened with Utah.
Well, yeah, with what you're saying about Utah, I completely agree. They just did not hold up to what they should have, and it's like we said last week. This was not as important as a game for BYU as this was for Utah. For Utah, they had to win this to stay in the top 20-25, and they're out. They're gone.
Yeah, they're gone.
Which we're going to talk about in a minute. But, yeah, they needed to win this game, and they did not. And this one was definitely a surprise. But our next 2 games were probably the biggest surprises. I did not expect.
The next few games, probably.
I did not. But for upsets, these next 2 were big surprises.
I mean, Texas versus Arkansas.
Yeah.
I don't remember who you picked.
I definitely picked Texas. And I thought they were going to win this game because, I mean, I agreed with you. I didn't really think that Arkansas was really doing anything over there. But I did say that it could go either way because Arkansas is still a hostile environment in an SEC team in a really good conference that has a lot of teams that are building back up besides Tennessee. But Arkansas, they came out and they played great, and they didn't make any mistakes, and it almost just seemed like Texas just couldn't get anything started. It was like the run game was terrible. The passing was terrible. Bijan Robinson, I mean, it looked like Arkansas had prepared for him. It looked like they were prepared to take that guy down no matter what.
Yeah, and he's a great running back, don't get me wrong, but he did not look like it in the game. And, I mean, Sarkisian even announced after the game that Texas is actually going to be looking into giving Casey Thompson the starting quarterback role, only because the past 2 games that Texas has played, Hudson Card has not been playing very well, very consistently as he was showing.
Hudson Card did not look good in that game.
Yeah, and
they had a big turnaround when Casey came in. They actually scored a couple touchdowns and got a lot more yardage, and he's a big reason why they came back. I mean, Hudson Card was not able to get anything started to do anything, and I think the Arkansas defense, they were ready for Bijan Robinson, and they were ready to sack Hudson Card because he could not get that defense off of him.
Yeah, and a big thing that Sarkisian said was he felt that Hudson was kind of all over the place, and he wasn't giving the play enough time before he felt under pressure, and he was trying to scramble and just do too much. And Sarkisian showing a little more faith in Casey right now. So I'm interested to see if Texas can turn around with a QB change.
We talked a lot last season about how important quarterbacks are to a team because they really are like the manager of the entire offense. If you don't have an offense, you don't have a team. You don't have a quarterback, you don't have an offense.
Nope.
So when you really look at it, Texas can turn this around. But how soon is the question? And that's also a question for USC. In our next upset, Stanford beating USC by almost 20 points. And that was insane.
Yeah, and
that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, and this led to a head coach firing at USC. And I was reading a little bit into it, and I was also watching some ESPN takes from it. And Reese Davis actually made the most sense in the fact that USC hired this man and gave him all these tools, to be successful. And they had a high standard because they gave him all these successful tools, all these things to become successful, make a great top-tier team, and, recruiting and everything like that. But, one of the biggest things Reese Davis said is if you're going to coach at USC, you can't let guys like Bryce Young and DJ Uiagalelei leave California and go to the other coast. You're trying to be a top-tier team, you got to get those top-tier players from your own state. And if you can't do that, you can't be successful. And, I don't like to call firing a mid-season. It's kind of just selling out the rest of the season. But, they thought they thought that they needed to do it now rather than later. And, it's unfortunate, but, I don't think Stanford's a great team. I just think USC did not show up at all.
They just didn't look like your typical USC team. I mean, I know even last season, right? I mean, they had some issues, but they won the games they needed to win, except for the conference championship. But that just did not look like USC. I don't know what was going on Saturday night, but it was not USC.
No, and what's going to happen again is if we end up having to call some of the USC games, I'm going to say that they're going to win and they're going to lose. And then when I say they're going to lose, they're going to win. So I hope we never have to call a game for them coming up. But, they could still win out. Do I think they will with an interim head coach right now? Not a lot of teams can do that.
Yeah.
So.
And moving on, we have 2 games here, but we got to talk about 2 teams, Texas A&M and Notre Dame. Earlier, we were discussing how there's a lot of teams that get by on their names, and these are 2 teams that are overranked and did not play great against not great teams on Saturday. Texas A&M versus Colorado. Texas A&M won by a field goal. Notre Dame versus Toledo. Notre Dame won by a field goal. Toledo, who does not have a good football program. I mean, look, Colorado's decent.
Yeah.
But Texas A&M, with all the hype they've been having, I mean, that's the team that's supposed to beat Alabama in the West.
Yeah, and it kind of leads back to what we were saying. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have an offense. And if you don't have an offense, you don't have a football team. And, Texas A&M, although King was showing promise, he did get injured. And, it was a quarterback battle for a while, and it was a last-second call to name the starter. But it's not looking good for Texas A&M.
Yeah, and they announced on Tuesday that he will be out for most of the season. So it's going to go to the other guy.
And, I don't think it's going to turn out very well for them. 2 weeks, and King, yeah, he had a good first game, but then the second game before he got injured, he wasn't playing all too well anyways, and then he gets hurt, the other guy comes in. Yes, he was pushing the offense down the field and ended up helping them win the game. And, the offense was moving when he came in. I'm not going to lie. But it was way too close of a game to say that this is a top 10 team.
And Texas A&M did not drop in the rankings, but Notre Dame did. Notre Dame finally dropped out of the top 10. They're at number 12 now. I was happy with that. I still think this should be lower, and we'll talk about that later too. But Notre Dame dropping to 12 out of the top 10 because they had a struggle win against Florida State and then another struggle win versus Toledo. This is exactly where they need to be, but, I'm just glad that they dropped. And, honestly, for what we thought was going to be not that interesting of a week in college football, it turned out to be really surprising.
I mean, it really was. I mean, I told you I was literally flipping through all the games, whether it was good games or bad games. Like I watched a little bit of Georgia versus UAB before, like right when Stetson Bennett.
And we destroyed them, by the way.
Yeah, right when Stetson Bennett threw a touchdown pass, and then I turned it off because nobody wants to see that. I mean, I watched the Alabama versus Mercer game where, you know, Alabama only scored 31 points in the first half. Like,
only.
What the heck? Like, Saban was very upset. So I was very upset. I was like, if he's mad, then I'm mad. I watched the Clemson South Carolina State game. No surprise there. No. But, you know, this week was a great week, and we didn't expect it to be.
And we're really excited to move on to next week. We got a great line of games, and coming in with our game of the week. Can you guess what it is? Do you have any idea? Well, let us tell you what it is. Alabama versus Florida in the Swamp.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be an interesting game, to say the least. I'm not too sure how it's going to benefit Florida whatsoever. But, you know, Florida's having some quarterback issues, of course. Emory Jones hasn't been playing out very well, and, you know, they're still trusting him with the starting role, but I don't see that working out very well to their favor. And, you know, we could see a lot of Anthony Richardson in this game against Alabama, just depending on how Emory Jones does.
Yeah, and everybody was saying at the beginning of the season, like, well, Emory Jones is going to be something special, dual threat quarterback or whatever. And I could just tell, even from how they played against Oklahoma in their bowl game, he was not going to be that, you know, good. Like, everybody's still saying that Florida's going to beat Georgia and beat Alabama, and I just don't see it, dude. So when we look at this game, I mean, it's in the Swamp. That's one of the worst atmospheres to be in if you're the opposing team in college in the SEC and in college football. It's not a great place if you're the opposing team. But Alabama coming in here with Bryce Young playing the way he is, with the weapons that he still has, and Mechie and the freshman Hall, I think that they're going to be all right. I don't think that the defense at Florida is enough to stop them. I don't think that Florida has the offense to score enough points on them, and Alabama definitely has the defense either way when it comes to that battle. So if I'm going with it, Alabama, you got my pick.
Yeah, I mean, last season Florida was the only team that came close to beating Alabama, and, you know, that was a completely different team.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at that. You had Kyle Trask, you had Kyle Pitts, Kamari Gamble, Kadarius Toney. You had so many weapons on that field, and they're all gone now. Yeah. So there's no way.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's unfortunate to see. It's especially unfortunate to see Florida ranked so high. But, you know, I'm giving my pick to Alabama only because the Florida defense is still not good. Like, even though they seem good because they've played nobodies recently, they're still not good.
I was just going to say, for an NC State team that, like, destroyed South Florida, and then for Florida to go and play them the next week and only beat them by like 20 points, that kind of proves exactly what you're saying. Their defense is nothing special.
I mean, don't get me wrong. NC State's a good team, even though they came off a tough loss against Mississippi State. Like, if they beat Mississippi State, they would probably be ranked in the AP poll right now. But tough loss by them. But, yeah, I just don't see, you know, you have the same lackluster defense, and then you have a worse offense than last season. I don't see it happening for Florida. I honestly think Alabama could blow them out so bad that they could be
It would look like Miami again.
Yeah, they could possibly. I don't think they're going to be knocked out of the top 25 just yet, but, you know, they still have a game against Georgia they have to face, which will knock them out. But, you know, they're going to be they could end up below Miami, seeing how bad this is.
Yeah, it just depends. But I really do think that Alabama is going to win this, and I think we have a great game of the week.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. You know, if Florida shows up and is able to kind of prove us wrong, it's going to be another one of those weeks where it's like it's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, Alabama getting a loss, Georgia goes to 1. So I'm chilling either way.
Alabama gets a loss. Well, Clemson won't move for a little bit, but...
Yeah, not until the people above them start losing. But speaking of the rankings, we are going to be jumping into the AP and the TBD top 25 rankings. So this week in the top 25, Joey, who has left us and who has joined us.
Leaving us after this hectic week 2, University of Southern California, the real USC, has dropped out of the AP Top 25, as well as Texas after a horrifying loss against Arkansas, and Utah after showing their offense cannot keep up with anybody else. Coming in to the AP Top 25, we have teams like Michigan ranking 25th, Arkansas jumping all the way up to 20th, BYU at 23, and that's it. But, I mean, there's some questionable teams being put into the AP Top 25. I mean, I saw Michigan possibly making it next week or so, but, after this week, I don't know. Washington's not that great of a team to, sell me on putting them in the top 25 this soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think these teams coming up in the top 25 are great. I'm a little skeptical with Michigan being in there yet. I thought Michigan State would take that over them. BYU, I understand it because of the win that they took against Utah, and I mean, it was pretty impressive and it was pretty convincing. But the team that I just don't see going that high is Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas beat Texas by a pretty good margin, but not that great of a margin.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't an impressive win by Arkansas over Texas. Yes, don't get me wrong. Even though Texas had some quarterback problems going on, but I've been saying for a little bit, I am more confident in putting Kentucky in the top 25 than Arkansas, only because, well, I'm looking into the future games and stuff like that. Arkansas has probably the most difficult schedule out of maybe anybody in the SEC. So that's just my opinion. Yeah, Arkansas played great against Texas, but it's 2 weeks, and they have history of not doing great after the first few games. So I just don't have any confidence in it.
Yeah, and somebody said that they see Arkansas going through the rest of the season undefeated until Alabama, but that means they beat Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, and Missouri. Missouri is the only one on that list that I can possibly see. They will not get by Georgia. They will not get by Ole Miss.
Maybe
they probably
Auburn.
will not get by Auburn.
Mississippi State, who isn't a great team, but LSU, Alabama, like I said, they have a tough schedule.
Yeah, there's no way. They're not going to beat all those teams. They're good, but they're not that good. Yeah. So, but moving on now to the TBD top 10. If you want to see the entire TBD top 25, head over to our Instagram and our Facebook. But for here, we're going to talk about the top 10. Starting at number 10, Ole Miss. The reason we have Ole Miss this high is because they are 2-0, and they're still looking pretty dang good. They beat down on Austin Peay on Saturday, and we just think that when looking at a lot of the other teams, like Notre Dame and USC, a lot of the Pac-12 schools, Ole Miss they have a better team and they look better than a lot of them. And that's why they're in our top 10.
I mean, their offense is clearly more consistent than a lot of people, other teams. And then, their defense, they actually went by their word and they actually progressed their defense, unlike another team later on in the top 10. But no shade, I swear. But yeah, I mean, Ole Miss is a very consistent team, especially compared to last season, and they're just impressing us every week.
Definitely. Coming in at number 9, Ohio State University. The reason being that they lost.
We lost.
They lost. So now they're 1-1. They have a win against Minnesota and a loss against Oregon, which a game they probably should have won with the way they were ranked. But we had them ranked last week at 3. Now they're ranked at 9, and that's where they're at because they had a loss against Oregon. And, honestly, I kind of wanted to rank Ole Miss to get higher, but I think their win against Minnesota is just more impressive than a win against Austin Peay and a win against Louisville.
And can I be honest real quick? And this is somewhat calling us out. We didn't even want Ohio State at number 3, so why did we do that? Was it
I don't think that we. I don't think that we had a choice. I think that it was because that they won the game they were supposed to win. They did look good in the second half, and ultimately against Minnesota, and ultimately that's just what it came down to.
That's how the cards laid out.
And they played a better game than Oklahoma did against Tulane. They beat the spread they were supposed to. I didn't like having them there, but last week, in week 1, they did play a game that looked like a top 4 game.
Yeah, the second half.
Yes.
The first half, they were playing like they weren't even.
Yeah, they figured it out in the second half. They couldn't do that against Oregon. So,
the next team up at number 8 is Texas A&M. We kind of touched up on it earlier. We're still not too sure about this ranking.
This is still temporary.
Yeah, this is a temporary position. This is just, where they're at now. They're not worse than the teams below them. They're better than the teams below them, but they're nowhere close to the teams above them. And with that, like we said earlier, the quarterback situation that they're dealing with, that could have a major effect on it. Their defense, yes, is very good, but their offense, like I said in my week 2 takeaways, their offense is what's dragging them behind, and it could be the lead of their demise for this season. At one point, we said that they could be the lead in the SEC West, and now it's not looking too promising.
Kind of already touched on it. Number 7, Cincinnati. I think that's temporary for them as well. The way that they've been playing recently, I mean, they're beating these, kind of nobody teams, but I'm ready for them to see a ranked opponent and see where that comes out.
This past week, it was kind of questionable. I mean, what happened in the first half? Like, what if you're going to be a top 10 team and you're playing these teams that are definitely lower talent than you, and you're tied in the first half 7-7?
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to be known for your offense. Yes, you have a good defense, but you're also known for your offense. You're known for your star quarterback.
Especially, when you have Ritter at quarterback,
and you're tied 7-7. So I don't know if there's something going on in the play calling, or it's the players, or what's happening. But when I saw that, I became instantly unsure of Cincinnati. And they do have a tough schedule this year because they decided that they were good enough to match up against these Power 5 teams, and tied 7-7. I'm just unsure of it. So yeah, temporary.
It's definitely temporary. And coming in at number 6, of course, we have Clemson. For obvious reasons, they're a 1-loss, 1-win team. They lost to Georgia. That's where they're probably going to be sitting for a while, unless they lose a game on their schedule, which I do not see happening. It would be surprising if that happened. I don't see it happening. Never know, but no. I would say you'd probably say the same thing.
I said earlier, I don't see Clemson moving up in a while, but I do see a few changes with the teams above them that could, just barely get them at number 4. Do I want us at number 4? I don't want to face Alabama in the playoffs, but there's still a chance. That last I saw, 40% chance it's Clemson, 42% Oregon, so on and so forth. And it was like a 90-something% if Clemson wins out, including the ACC title game. But there's still a lot of factors that go into it. So yeah, Clemson's going to be stuck at 6 for a while.
Yeah, and that's where we're at with that. And coming into number 5 and number 4, we disagreed heavily on this, but eventually we did come to a consensus. Coming in at number 5, Oregon.
And if you've been with us for a while, you know that we don't take things like the AP poll. I mean, in some instances, we may agree with the AP poll, but, 9 times out of 10, we're not going to look at it like an AP poll. And there was an instance where we disagreed, and somebody had to point out that the AP poll was kind of being brought into it. But, Oregon played number 3 Ohio State, but as we've been saying, Ohio State is not that great of a team. They got there based off their name, and, we knew Ohio State's defense was not good. We knew that they were struggling at quarterback with overthrows and stuff like that. And, Oregon was able to take advantage of it. Yes, they were missing 2 of their star defenders and still won. But at least when I looked at it, Oregon's defense was able to make maybe 1 or 2 stops. Stop the drive, get the ball back to their offense. Their offense was the key part of winning that game. And, you could really tell that in the second half when, Ohio State started making stops and all of a sudden you're not breathing anymore because you're going, oh no. But, that was the factor that held them at 5 instead of 4.
Yeah, for sure. And with Iowa coming in at 4, that's an easy one. They beat up on Iowa State, and the reason I thought that Iowa should be at 5 and Oregon at 4 was just the way that I thought Oregon had a better game against Ohio State. But when you look at it, Iowa just beat down on Iowa State, and it was definitely the better matchup, and that's where we're at. And so coming into 3-2-1, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, it's real self-explanatory. It's not going to change until one of those teams gets a loss, which I don't see happening anytime soon. Oklahoma's facing Rutgers this weekend. That's easy. Georgia's facing South Carolina. That's going to be a pretty easy matchup. And Alabama's facing off against Florida, which you've already touched on. So those are not going anywhere. But that's the TBD top 10. Again, if you want to see the full top 25, head over to our Instagram or our Facebook at TBD_SportsCast.
And feel free to disagree with us because people normally do.
Yes, please comment what you think on that post. We will talk with you about it, and we want to hear some opinions. And moving on to opinions in our big Week 3 matchup, starting off with number 8 Cincinnati at Indiana at 12 p.m.
So I kind of expressed this opinion on Saturday, but this game will really show how the Big Ten is, because as an ACC guy, I've gotten a lot of slack on how the ACC is not very competitive, not very good. But right now, you're looking at the Big Ten, and there's not a lot of promises in there. There are some promises, but also a little bit of downside. Cincinnati, a good team. They're supposed to have a great offense. They have a good defense, as we know. Last good defense Indiana faced, they got blown out and wasn't able to score a touchdown against Iowa. This is Cincinnati's first Power 5 conference team of the season. We did have a lot of confidence in Indiana.
And even though Indiana is not ranked in the AP, Indiana is still ranked in our poll. In somewhere between 20 and 25.
Yeah, and it's really hard to say, but I'm gonna call Indiana only because it's at Indiana, and again, the last Power 5 team that faced off against Cincinnati was Georgia last season, and they came up short, and I think that's what's gonna happen this game. Now, if Indiana's defense can't hold up Cincinnati's offense, there's a problem, but I'm choosing Indiana here. Yeah,
and with Indiana, having a tough loss against Iowa at the beginning of the season, but then coming up next week, fixing some of that, and beating Idaho 56-14. And of course, Idaho's nothing special. But still a convincing win against a not great team. I'm with you. I'm going to go with the Hoosiers on this one. I think that Indiana can definitely pull this one out. I think it's going to be close.
I think this re-ranks Indiana.
I think
in the AP if they win this.
If they win this by a convincing margin, they come back into the AP,
and then
they'll go up in the TBD. So.
Yeah, and then then you can tell me, hey, you were wrong about the Big Ten, but there's still some questions about Big Ten. But the next matchup coming up is number 15 AP poll wise, number 15 Virginia Tech versus West Virginia
at 12 p.m.
at West Virginia. A fun little stat that I saw the last time. Well, this is actually a rivalry game.
Yeah.
This became a rivalry before the Virginia Tech came over to the ACC. They were in the same conference. And West Virginia, pretty sure it said they were on a win streak when it was at home against Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech, the only question they have is can they throw the ball? We know they can run it. We know they have a good defense. But West Virginia also has given up very little yardage. Even though they're not ranked right now, they have a better defense than per usual for a West Virginia team. I am personally going to go West Virginia. I hate to say it, but I think it's going to be a close game because it's a battle of two great defenses. I think I'm picking West Virginia.
I'm going to go opposite of you, and I'm going to say Virginia Tech. With the way that their defense stood up to North Carolina, who's still good. They destroyed Georgia State on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Howell threw for like 5 touchdowns.
No, Sam Howell
was great.
Sam Howell threw for 3 and ran in for 2.
Either way, responsible for 5 touchdowns. So I'm going to go with Virginia Tech on this one because of their defense. And I think that if their offense can step it up, I think they're in there like swimwear. So
Throwback to the vlog.
Yeah, I definitely think that I think that we're definitely going to be opposite on that one, but we'll definitely find out who's going to be right next week. And moving on, Michigan State at number 24, Miami at 12 o'clock.
This one's going to be interesting. I've been a big believer in Michigan State this season. Their running back core is just really good. I mean, last game it wasn't even Walker. It was I don't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but they had a QB battle at the beginning of the season, and then they kind of figured it out. And it's just. This is a hard one because Miami does have that offense, but they don't have the best defense. They barely beat Appalachian State. They got destroyed by Alabama. Meanwhile, Michigan State, 2 wins, close game against Northwestern, but blowing out Youngstown. I am personally going to say Michigan State. The question is, of course, can Michigan State's defense hold up against Miami's offense, and can Miami's defense hold up against the run game of Michigan State? Both really good questions, but I think one is more likely than the other, and I think it's going to be Michigan State coming out on top.
I'm with you. I'm going Michigan State. You're right about their run game, and, this is their first ranked opponent. Mm-hmm. But with the way that, Miami played against App and also played against Alabama, I think that this is going to be the thing that takes them out of the top 25.
I can't believe I just chose against 2 ACC teams.
Yeah, I'm going with Michigan State on this one. This is one of the biggest matchups next week. Number 22, Auburn, at number 10, Penn State.
And now this is an Auburn team who I personally don't understand why they're ranked, because of the 2 teams that they faced they're essentially high school teams. Yes, they blew them out incredibly the past 2 weeks, but Penn State, incredible offense. Like I said earlier, turnover ratio is in their favor, and their offense has been consistent. Maybe not the most powerful offense, but when your defense is putting in the work and your offense has so much time to get into the end zone. Auburn, yes, has shown that they have a better offense than they did last season, a more consistent offense. My problem is, would their overall team be able to match up with a team like Penn State? I personally don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm picking Penn State.
This is a really, really, really tough one because
it's also whiteout.
Auburn's got that offense. Penn State got that defense. And Penn State definitely got that home field advantage in their favor. And I think that definitely tips the scales towards Penn State. So I'm going to go with you. I'm going to call Penn State. I was kind of going back and forth on that one, but I think ultimately Penn State's going to bring it on, and I think Auburn is not going to be ready for what's about to happen to them, and I think that they are going to drop from the 25.
It'll be a close game, though.
And moving on to actually another big kind of rivalry in the ACC, Virginia at number 21, University of North Carolina at 7:30.
Virginia is one of those teams that has not been talked about enough after week 2. Absolutely blowing out Illinois, which some people are like, but remember, Illinois is still an impressive team. Yeah, are they the best in their conference? No, but it's an impressive win, blowing out Illinois the way they did. And UNC, last Virginia team they faced, they ended up losing by a touchdown. Can Virginia? The thing about Virginia is they actually have an offense. The only question is, can their defense stand up to UNC's offense? And can UNC's defense stand up to Virginia's offense? This is really tough. This is another team I've been pretty big on, just like Michigan State. And this is a game that, just like Michigan State's game, could put them into the top 25. It's at Chapel Hill. This is a game I've been back and forth on. I'm gonna go UNC.
And I'm right there with you. I love Sam Howell. I think he's a great quarterback, and I think that with the adjustments they've made and getting to play a warm-up game against Georgia State, I think that they're going to come out, and I think they're going to rock. They're going to rock Virginia. It might be a lot closer than people think, but
Yeah.
I think UNC is definitely going to come out and win this game. But with this next game, though, this looks a lot like Utah versus BYU, and that's because it's number 19 Arizona State at 23 BYU at 10-15. And with this game, like last week, Utah, that game was important for them to stay in the top 25, and they lost. And they dropped. For Arizona State this week, this is a very important game for them to make sure that they win this so they don't drop out of 25. But this time for BYU, it's the same deal. Because either one of those teams loses, they're out. Arizona State, if they lose, they may not. But I see them dropping out if they lose this game to BYU.
Possibly. But unfortunately, I'm sorry, BYU. Y'all had a great week, or a great game last week. But I just don't see it. Arizona State's been showing a lot of promise. Do I think they're the best? And again, do I think they're the best in their conference? No. But when it comes down to it, Arizona State's offense has been rolling. They haven't had to worry about much defense because they've just been blowing past everybody else's. BYU, you're more of a traditional kind of, team. And I just don't think it works out in your favor against Arizona State.
BYU is coming off of a high against a win against Utah. This is being played at BYU. I mean, Arizona State hasn't really played anybody, worth mentioning. And, BYU hasn't either, except for Utah with their win in week 2. I'm going to go with BYU on this one. I'm going to say BYU takes this against Arizona State, and I think we'll be seeing Arizona State drop out of the top 25 and BYU, heading up. And the only reason being is just because, their offense is stellar. Their defense is not bad. Definitely needs some work. Not bad. But BYU's offense is stellar. They're playing this game at home, and they're coming off that morale against beating Utah. So I think BYU is going to take it out, dude.
But, yeah, that concludes our episode this week. If you haven't already, go check us out on Instagram and Facebook at TBD_SportsCast. If you're not watching us on YouTube, go check it out on YouTube, man. There's a lot of cool visuals. There's a lot of fun stuff. There might be even some extras. You never know.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and ring that Liberty Bell and for notifications on our posts. We post every Friday, and we will see you next week.
And always remember,
no matter what team you pull for, if you're on God's side, you're always on the winning team. But just know that God, in his love, sent his only son to die for you while you were still his enemy. That's how much he loves you. That's how much he wants to know you. And if you ever want to talk about that, hit us up on Instagram or Facebook DM. Leave a comment on this YouTube video. We will sit and talk about Jesus with you, and we will talk about anything that you want to talk about regarding that. Just know that you're loved and you're cared for and you're wanted, and we're praying for all of our listeners. We love you, God loves you, and we will see you on TBD Sportscast College Football for Week 4 after Florida loses next week.
bye-bye.
Later.